Hi, I'm Mallory.
And I'm Laura.
And we are out here on the beautiful campus of Meridian to talk to you this week about a topic that I have been thinking about a little bit.
Okay.
So, Laura, earlier this week we talked about this concept of locus of control.
Yes.
And when we were talking about it, I kept thinking, I have some questions about it, and
Okay.
I have a little difficulty with it. So I guess I kind of want to unpack it.
Sure.
So if you wanted to share what I mean by that, or what we were talking about, and then we can talk a little bit more about it.
Sure, that sounds great.
Okay.
So what she's talking about is an internal versus an external locus of control, and that was the conversation that we were having. And what that is just the idea that whether or not we believe that we have control over the trajectory of our lives, whether we have control over what happens to us, what happens next. And if we have an external locus of control, then we do not believe that we have control over our own lives. We believe that we don't have control over what happens to us. And if we have an internal locus of control, then we fundamentally at our core believe that we can control what happens next and where our life goes and the circumstances that we're in. An internal locus of control is a lot healthier, and that's what we were talking about, just sort of the need to get there and the benefits of doing that.
So this is a really good transition, because that's kind of what I'm having difficulty with.
Okay.
Is, you know, if internal locus of control is ideal, right? I can't help but to think about other things. So here's what my mind is doing. I'm thinking about illness, right? I'm thinking about someone's maybe spiritual belief, whether it's religion or the concept of karma, right? These are all things that are seemingly out of our hands.
Sure.
And I'm also thinking about the fact that we're all living in a global pandemic, right?
Right.
We don't
That's
have
valid.
control over that. So how do we, I guess,
Like, what do we do with the situations
what do we do with
that are
those
difficult?
situations that are more like external, if internal
Yes.
is ideal, right?
That's a great thought process, and I think it's really valid, and I think probably everybody shares that concern when we talk about locus of control, right? So there's so many things that feel like they are sort of predestined, if you will, or at the very least not anything that we either see coming or can do anything about. But I think that the difference is that there are always decisions and choices that we can make in our life that are proactive. The first thing you mentioned was illness, right? So sometimes things happen that we can't control, right? People get illnesses and things happen with our health. However, before any of that happens, we have control over choosing to live a healthy lifestyle. We have control over choosing to have good fitness or good nutrition, because we know that the benefits that come with that. So those are things that we're doing before illness or sickness or anything even enters the picture. So when we talk about like faith, and we talk about karma, and we talk about all of those things, that those aren't necessarily bad. It's just that we want to find where that line is, where we feel like we're victims of our own circumstances, versus being proactive and making intentional decisions that we do believe can control what happens next.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess what's sticking out to me is you using the word proactive.
Yes.
Which is way different than what we've talked about when we've talked about the concept of control in our past videos.
Yeah.
Because in the past we're talking about, as far as control, reactively. So,
Right.
These thoughts, negative thoughts that we had, for example. So these thinking traps or negative thoughts, they happen, but how can we reactively change them? But this concept is different.
Yes.
We're talking about like proactive, those intentional decisions, which I think is really cool and is different, and something that I haven't really thought about as much.
Well, because I think this is more of a core belief than it is necessarily an activity. Like, this isn't like, okay, what can I do? Right. This is a belief that we either have or don't have. How much control do we really have over what's happening in our lives? And that's hard, because if we're finding that we don't fundamentally believe that we have that much control, then that's where action has to happen. And it looks very different than like what we've talked about before with being reactive, right? So it looks more like just looking for ways in which we can make intentional decisions. So, look at your life, and do you feel like a driver or do you feel like a passenger? And if you feel like a passenger most of the time in your own life, just actively look for some ways in which you can drive, right? Make some intentional decisions that are going to impact you in good ways. And then that will help sort of change that over time, that mindset and that fundamental belief. But if we can get to a place where we do genuinely believe, and we've made enough decisions where we suddenly start to see evidence collect, right? Where we genuinely believe that we have control over our own destinies, then we're going to be a little bit healthier and happier and more productive, and just generally in a better place. So.
Yeah. And you guys let us know in the comments if there's any decisions that you've recently made or that you want to make to kind of have more control over your life. And then just know that if you ever get to a point where you feel like you don't have control and need someone else and need extra help, just know that Meridian is by your side. You could always give us a call for services at 352-374-5600.
Thanks so much, guys. Have a great week.
Bye.